Good late morning or early afternoon, everybody. It is time for another NCAA college football watch schedule. And there aren't going to be too many more of these because we are approaching the end of the season, but November is always a very important month. You can separate the pretenders from the contenders, both in terms of teams and players. So let's try to gear up on who we're going to be keeping track of this week. And it's going to be a busy week. We start Thursday, early evening, late afternoon, and it goes all the way through late Saturday night this week. So here's my recommended viewing schedule, again, using only major networks. Here's what I recommend. November the 2nd, tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. on ESPN, we have Wake Forest versus Duke. Now, Duke is not as interesting as they normally would be because I don't know if Riley Leonard is going to play. And if he does play, I don't know what he's going to be able to do. He has not looked good lately at all. He was awful last week, and clearly he's not himself. So, with no Riley Leonard out there, it's not as interesting as it could be. That's definitely the case. So, with that being said, you still have Graham Barton, you still have not DeAndre Carter, you still have Dwayne Carter, but Riley Leonard was the really interesting piece here for me. He was a guy who, at one point, I was thinking about elevating to a first round status as a quarterback, but it's hard to say with him not playing well or not playing, period. And at this point, with the second half of his year being derailed, I think it's worthy of wondering, is he going to end up staying back for another year? I read an article not that long ago with the idea of him transferring to Notre Dame and playing there for a year in 2024 and then coming out for the 2025 draft. So, if that happens, then obviously that takes a really interesting piece off the board. But either way, that's the best that Thursday has to offer in terms of college football. And then we have another game on Friday at 4:30 p.m. ESPN2 this time. Boston College versus Syracuse. Boston College has one of my favorite left guards, Christian Mahogany. More of a run blocker than a pass protector, but still I like him. Syracuse would normally have Orande Gadsden the second, but he's injured, not going to play again this year, I don't think. So that's obviously takes a little bit of gas out of this one. He's been really quiet all year, but he hasn't really had the chance to do much of anything this year, so I don't know what to say about him. But Mahogany is interesting enough on his own, I guess. So that would be my recommended watch schedule for the next couple days here. And then we get into Saturday where the stuff really starts to pop. There's going to be a lot to follow at pretty much all times of the day. Okay, so we're going to start off at 9 a.m. on Fox, and there were a lot of games in the 9 a.m. window that were interesting, and I had to make some tough choices. Ultimately, I landed on Kansas State versus Texas, even though Quinn Ewers is not going to play because of the injury. Kansas State is one of my favorite low-key teams to watch this year for prospects. Ben Sinote, tight end, and Cooper Bebe, the left guard, who's playing tackle for them, but they continue to both be guys that have impressed me this year. And Texas still has Jatavion Sanders, Tavondre Sweat, and Jalen Ford. They even got a Jalen Catalon, I think, at safety, who is, I mean, I'm not super keyed up on him or anything, but he's interesting enough. I don't mind him. So Texas is still one of my top teams to watch, even without Quinn. And Quinn will hopefully be back by the end of the year. But this remains a marquee matchup for me personally. And then the other 9 a.m. game I have is Notre Dame versus Clemson. Now, seeing this Clemson defense, which really has been a disappointment this year against a good team like Notre Dame, is worth it alone. Rook Orohoro, Tyler Davis, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Barrett Carter, Andrew Makuba. Seeing what those guys can do against a really good Notre Dame team is worth it. Now, the results may not be great because Clemson's defense has not really been getting it done this year, but I still want to see how these players fare individually. Notre Dame has had a player enter the mix recently, their tight end, Mitchell. He's somebody who's moving up draft boards, getting some attention, playing well for the Fighting Irish. So we've drafted a Notre Dame tight end before, and it worked out pretty decently for the Seahawks. So maybe Mitchell will be another one. And I think he's somebody I want to monitor for the rest of this season. All right, so that's your 9 a.m. window. Let's get to 12:30 here. I got two games. Again, some difficult decisions to make, but I'm going to say Missouri. They've got Tyron Hopper, who's a linebacker who's caught my attention recently. I think he's one of the better linebackers in this class, with some of the guys starting to really fade. He's caught my attention. And they're going up against Georgia. And even without Bowers, this is a very stacked team in terms of guys who are going to get drafted. Personally, of course, my interest is Van Pran, Stackhouse, Mondin Jr., Johnson Dumas, and Bullard. So a center and a bunch of guys on defense. Um, Guys definitely worth monitoring as potential future Seahawks. So even without the big gun, which is Brock Bowers, who, by the way, as Seahawks fans, how interested are we in Brock Bowers when he's never going to be there when we pick anyway? So that's a really good one, and we have another pretty decent 12:30 game on Fox. Penn State plays Maryland. Maryland, of course, is one of my favorite safeties in this class now, Bew Braid. He's a late riser. And Penn State has Theo Johnson and Curtis Jacobs. Theo Johnson's kind of a late blooming tight end for me, somebody who has caught my attention lately. And Curtis Jacobs at linebacker has been, I don't know, he's kind of a tough evaluation for me, but he continues to be at the very least worth monitoring. Okay, I got three games here in the 4:30 window, and this is going to be tough to balance, but all three games bring different things to the table. We got Purdue versus Michigan, and this should be a pretty one-sided game, but at this point, I kind of feel like Michigan is pretty much always much must-watch TV. I would prefer, of course, they were playing a better opponent, but they've got so many guys. Like, this is just kind of scratching the surface here. McCarthy, Zach Zinter, Jenkins, Junior Colson, and Rod Moore. There are a couple other guys on that Michigan team as well that are probably worth picking up on now. I think they've got another offensive lineman that is probably going to get drafted, but you just wonder how long they're going to be in the game because Michigan tends to have these games over by halftime. But I'm still going to list that one on NBC here. Next 4:30 game on ABC. I'm going to be watching this game anyway. I'll be streaming it, in fact. The Huskies take on the USC Trojans. Of course, Washington with Michael Penix and Braylon Trice. And USC has Caleb Williams and Kalen Bullock. Now, I admittedly, in terms of prospects, this is starting to be a little bit of a tough sell because Trice is not really playing that well, and I don't think we need an edge all that badly right now anyway. Caleb's going to be well out of reach. He's going number one overall for sure. And it's not chock full of great Seahawks prospects, but it's going to be a great game, and it's going to be interesting to see how Penix does in a game where he probably needs to put up like 50 points to expect to win. So while I'm not a huge fan of Penix as an NFL quarterback, I do think it's worth monitoring to see how he responds to a situation like that. 4:45, so same basic time window on CBS. This game is just too good to ignore. LSU versus Alabama. LSU has, of course, Jaden Daniels, a Heisman candidate, and Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo, two defensive linemen who I think are very intriguing for the upcoming draft. Um, Smith kind of going in the wrong way, but there's still time to correct. And then Alabama, of course, has Dallas Turner, Justin Egbogbi, and Malachi Moore. So really good game there. Both pretty good teams, by the way, as well. And then we wrap things up at 7 p.m. on ESPN. Oregon State playing Colorado. Colorado's always kind of interesting, although not as interesting as they were before with Sanders. Oregon State, however, has had a guard prospect kind of really rise up here. Fuaga. If you don't know that guy, look into him. He's becoming one of the top interior offensive linemen in this upcoming draft. Like, he has out of nowhere become a guy who is now expected to be a day two pick. And if he continues to play really well, maybe even beyond that, maybe we could be talking about a day one guy. Not for me personally, because I think he's a right guard in the NFL, but definitely worth monitoring here because he's he's really kind of just risen up out of nowhere to claim borderline top 50 status in a lot of big boards. So yeah, Fuaga, must see TV for interior offensive line enthusiasts. And that's what I got for this week. So I will see you guys later. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I missed anything. And that is my recommended watch schedule for college football this week for prospect purposes. See y'all later.